Hello everyone, and welcome to the 2022 English Maths and ESOL conference. My name's Stephen Evans and I'm the Chief Executive of the Learning and Work Institute. It's great to have, I think, north of 300 people registered for this event, so lots to debate, lots to discuss. We're holding this event during Lifelong Learning Week, which we hold every year about this time of year. And that's a great chance to help to celebrate the very best in adult learning and also try and inspire more adults to learn as well. And we know that capabilities and skills like English, maths, ESOL, but also digital, citizenship, environmental capabilities and many more are really, really fundamental for life and work in the 21st century. And yet we know that across England, for example, 1 in 5 adults has relatively low literacy or numeracy, could benefit from improving those capabilities. And yet 63% fewer people are taking part in adult literacy or numeracy classes in England each year compared to 10 years ago. So the need is there, but the provision or the participation has gone down. And of course, government funding cuts are a big part of that, but lots of other stuff going on there that we'll discuss during the course of today. Now, the good news is that we've got, for the first time, I think probably in a decade, we've got new funding going into this area through the Multiply programme, which we'll discuss during the course of the morning. And it's good to see that, that investment. Of course, you know, numeracy often isn't in isolation from those other core skills as well. So we need to think about how we blend these things together. And of course, you know, we always want to do more. We always want to do better as well. So Multiply will be a focus, but we don't want just a sole focus on that because there's lots more going on and lots more that matters as well. I should also probably mention a cost of living crisis, which of course is affecting many learners or potential learners, but also provision and providers and tutors and staff working in lifelong learning as a whole. So, I mean, the funding rate for literacy and numeracy has been frozen in England by the government, I think since 2013. And now we've got much higher than expected inflation, which is having further effects. So we need more money for more provision, but we also need to invest in the provision that we've got so it's deliverable and so we can pay staff and tutors a fair wage for the excellent work that they're doing. So money's really important and there's definitely not enough of it, but also how do we inspire adults to want to learn? How do we hook them into that learning provision? How do we make sure it's delivering what they want? How do we think about what comes next for adults completing their provision as well? Because we know that the benefits of English, maths and ESOL are so widespread. You know, sometimes it's about getting a job, sometimes it's about getting on at work, but oftentimes it's about making new friends, being part of the community, health and well-being, supporting family members, all kinds of other things as well. And we mustn't lose sight of all those wider benefits and drivers of adults taking part in learning. So we'll try and cover as much of that as possible and much more besides, I'm sure, during the course of this morning. We've got a packed agenda to run through. Now, a couple of little bits of housekeeping to start with. I mean, we do this, we've been doing this conference for, I can't remember how many years now, quite a few years, and we do it in partnership. So we're really grateful to be working with NATECLA, UCU, the Institute of Education and RAPAL as well, and hear more as we go through the course of the day as well. And for those of you on social media, please do use the Twitter hashtag ESOL22. So we'd like to see lots of tweets about what's going on and questions and comments. And also you can post your questions, thoughts, comments in the chat box within Slido as well. And we'll try and pick up as many of those as we go along as well. And keep an eye on that because the Learning and Work team will post various bits and bobs as we're going along too. And we're also going to do a couple of polls during the course of the morning as well, which should be on the polls tab for those of you watching in Slido. So I think we'll kind of maybe kick off with the first poll now, if we could, please, which should be coming up both on the screen and in the poll box. And the question is, there's a lot going on in policy and in practice. There you go. Would you recommend L&W events? Yes, is the answer to that, please. So this is the first poll. To what extent are the needs of adult essential skills learners being met? So fully, mostly, partially, or not at all. So I've mentioned some of the things going on and some of the need and some of the participation rates. It'd be good to get a sense from all of you about the extent to which this is covering what it needs to cover, or are there small, large, or substantial gaps there that need to be addressed. So please do kind of get voting away, and we'll bring up the results of that relatively shortly. I'll try and give you a warning before we close off the poll, and there will be another poll a bit later on as well. Now, before we move on to our first session, there's just one other thing that I wanted to mention, which is that we are today launching a new Multiply Effective Practice Network. So this is, Multiply is a really big investment. I think it's about 360 million over 3 years or so, something like that. And it's great to see, as I said earlier, that focus on adults numeracy. So what we wanted to do is try and provide a space for commissioners and providers and practitioners to come together and share some of their experiences, some of the challenges, some of the ways of overcoming those as well. And of course, not just about Multiply. Multiply is the kind of focal point for some of this, but adult numeracy in general, I think. So the aim is to provide some forums to share what's working well, think about solutions to those challenges, and also share some of the evidence and insights from that evidence, both across England, but also across the UK and across the world as well. So we're looking to put on various events during the course of the year. That'll be both online and in person, and then potentially some bespoke support in particular areas. You know, if you've got a particular challenge or want to know about thing X, whatever thing X happens to be. So there are details of this and where you can sign up. It's all kind of free to sign up on the Learning and Work Institute website, and I'm hoping that the link is about to appear, if it hasn't already, into the chat box, so you kind of can click through and have a look. So please do sign up for that if you're interested in adult numeracy and Multiply in particular, and it'd be great to kind of help to support that best practice and think about how we overcome all of those challenges. So more about that as we go on through this morning. But that's all I wanted to say by way of introduction and background. So I'm going to move us on to the first bit of the morning now, which is to hear from Elena Stan, who's about to appear, I hope. Morning, Elena. And Elena, I won't give away too much of your story, but I know that you arrived, I think, from Romania about 5 years ago. Yes. And you've been looking to improve your English and maths to help with your career aspirations. So I wonder if maybe you just want to say a little bit about why you wanted to improve your English and maths and what those career goals are.
When I first arrived here, it was very hard for me to understand what people were saying. So I felt kind of isolated. And I took this initiative to study English so I can make connections, make friends, and become a part of the community. And it made so much impact in my life. I didn't realize in the beginning. I was so scared when I started, but then everyone at the college, they were so helpful, and they believe in you more than you believe in yourself. And I think that's the reason I aspired to do much more, because at first I didn't think that I would just complete an access course in health studies. I only wanted to communicate with people and understand help my son at school as well. And it's all about connections, isn't it?
Yes, exactly. And you mentioned, I think for a lot of us, if we go back to or if we go to college or something as an adult, it can be a bit scary because it's been a long time perhaps since we've been at school. And if you're from a different country as well, you're in a new country. Was it, you kind of mentioned it was a bit scary when you were first joining?
Yes, yes. I didn't know where to go, what to do. I even had those when the test came, so I would test my abilities. I was so emotional, and but then with the help of everyone there, because the teachers and all the staff at the college, they are so kind, and they give you, they guide you through all the process, which is amazing. And then you build your confidence and self-esteem, and then you know that you can do more and more and more, and you don't feel silly about not knowing things. You can ask questions, you don't feel ashamed of what your background is, and where you come from, and how you used to think, and what kind of education you had before. Everyone is equal, and that makes a lot of difference.
And I think a lot of people say that they make really good friends and connections on these sorts of classes. So did you find that was the case for you?
Yes, absolutely. With everyone, if possible. And then we kept in touch. Some of us, we kept in touch, and we're still going, and we have a beautiful relationship. Yes.
And so you said it's a little bit scary when you first joined the class, but you kind of everyone was really supportive.
Yes.
Did you, when you were doing your learning, did you find it were there kind of challenges balancing that with looking after children and other things, or was it relatively straightforward?
Absolutely. It was a bit hard to juggle with everything, but you get the space to study at your own pace. It's not like you have to do a lot in the beginning, and teachers are not expecting from you to do you can do the best you can, but then if you have other commitments, they can accommodate it. Like, I had to pick up my son at 3:00, so I would have to leave 10 minutes earlier, and I always got the work from the teacher so I can catch up at home.
And I think you were learning with Adult Education Wolverhampton, weren't you, who are just a really excellent provider. So they were able to be flexible in terms of, if you needed to slow down a bit or speed up a bit, they were quite flexible.
Yes. And that made a lot of difference, because I wanted to do more. And then I enrolled on other courses as well. And I took everything that I felt was right for me.
Well, tell us a little bit about some of the other courses that you've done as well.
Yes, so I've done all the family courses that were available, and then I did some community interpreting courses on Access course. I completed it, and I'm really proud because I've done it with distinction. I have to say it, and that's with the help of my teachers. They've been there all the time, and because of maths, I could plan step by step my work. And I didn't realize back then, but maths is helping us a lot in our lives. We're not aware of it, but now I want to learn more because I can see the practical thing behind everything we are studying.
Yeah, and I think you signed up first to help with your English. Yes. Did you have in mind that you were then, once you'd done some English learning, you were going to do some maths and other things, or did the maths just kind of crop up?
It did. It was there. Everyone was enrolling on English and maths, and then it was like a second split, thought. If I can do English, I can do maths as well. Then I can refresh what I've learned. But then here, the way people study is so much different. I could understand. I've learned so much vocabulary in maths, and then I could see how I can apply the knowledge in real life. And I was like, wow, it's amazing. before that, I thought it's just abstract, but now I could see how we can apply it in real life. And it's so much easier.
So you were also, I guess, learning different types of English while you were doing your maths, because we talk about multiplication or, you know, whatever it happens to be. There's different types of English associated with the maths, isn't there? Thinking about it.
Yes, it was new vocabulary for me there. It was hard in the beginning because of English, but then step by step you learn it as it is, and then you work out, and the more you learn, the easier it gets.
Yeah, that's a great. We talk a lot about English and maths together, and that's a great example of why that's really important. Along with digital skills, actually, if you're trying to do some learning online, for example. And we were talking before the event started a little bit about where you're hoping to go and your kind of hopes for your careers, for your career and jobs. Do you want to just say a little bit about what you're hoping to do?
Yes. My goal is to become a physiotherapist, and I will apply to university and complete that course. Meanwhile, I'm thinking to open my own business and in massage therapies, so I can become more financially independent and build more skills, and also volunteer as in NHS. I'm looking right now to build up the skills that I need, and then to make it easier for me to go through university.
Brilliant.
It is a bit scary, but I have the confidence that I can do it because I've done so many years of studying that I can do it.
You can definitely do it. Yes.
Yes.
I think the idea of volunteering both sort of helps to help others, but then also hopefully helps you on your path towards university and your own business as well.
Yes, I've been a volunteer as a teacher assistant for almost 4 years in a project, Beautiful. I thought that at first I wanted to give to community and to help other people, but then I've learned that I'm gaining more skills and I'm building more confidence, and it's amazing. It's a two-way win situation.
And Elena, there's lots of other people who are perhaps in a similar position to you were as well. What advice would you give to them?
When it gets harder, you have to work it through. You have to keep yourself motivated because it gets harder. It's not easy. And always you have to keep on pushing when it comes. And then with the help of the teachers, they're amazing. And you can always ask for guidance, for support. When it gets harder, you can ask for that, which you don't have to deal with. You're not alone. You don't have to deal with it alone. And that makes it easier. Your learning process is much more enjoyable.
Yes, and are you still in touch with some of the friends that you made on your
yes.
courses as well? Absolutely.
And we look back how it was in the beginning and where we are right now, and it's absolutely, you can measure that achievements that you've made throughout your learning experience.
Well, let me maybe just ask you that. So you've talked a bit about some of the benefits you've got from learning and doing the courses you've done, but what do you think are some of the main benefits for you of the learning you've done?
The main one is for me that I can save. I've been saving money for 3 years now. Before that, I was in debt all the time. Now, when I go to shops or wherever I'm going, I can see how can I make more savings, and that's a real good plus for me. Also, I can. It's more about confidence and feeling more independent, because when you have the knowledge, you don't have to rely on other people to help you.
Yeah, I think the sort of confidence is so important because it then allows you to do so many other things as well that perhaps you weren't even thinking of. And then what you were saying about saving money, that's kind of a really practical thing, isn't it? And particularly at the moment with the prices kind of going up everywhere, it's really, really important and really difficult for people at the moment. So a mix of the sort of practical and then those confidence benefits as well.
Yes.
Elena, first of all, your English is amazing, and second of all, you're a very inspirational example. I think probably I, along with lots of other people, are feeling very inadequate listening to all the things that you've done, and I've no doubts that you will go on and do your university studies and start a brilliant business as well. I'm really grateful to you for sharing your story and your examples this morning, and very best of luck with everything that comes. You don't need any luck, but you'll be brilliant. But thank you so much.
Thank you.
A huge thanks to Elena. I'm sure I haven't been able to keep an eye on the chat because I was concentrating on the conversation, but I'm sure there's lots of people saying how amazing Elena is. So we'll try and dig out some of those messages for you, Elena, as well. I'm sure are there. And great way to start the conference as well, hearing a really inspiring story of how English and maths learning and ESOL learning can really help with those practical skills and practical things in life, but also confidence and making friends and all of those other things as well. That's what it's all about. So I said it much better than my intro at the start. What I'm going to do now is, do we have I think I may have do we have a short video that we wanted to watch? Can one of the team please help me out?
I had a rough time at school. I was bullied a lot. I came to him to go back into education to help me get a job. Instead of me sitting at home doing nothing, I want to do something, and I've enjoyed it so far. I recently just passed my level 1 IT, and also I passed my health and social level 1s. I'm doing the level 2 in September, and also I'm doing a mentoring course. I'm working in mental health now as well, and I'm doing courses to get myself a bit higher up in my work and being who I want to be.
Joanne decided to return to learning because she wanted to improve her life chances. Obviously, Joanne's life is unique and she's come across all sorts of challenges and problems in her life. And yet, in some ways, she's very typical of many of the people that we get through the doors. I think the biggest challenge Joanne faces returning to learning and building up her career has been her mental health struggles. Because of her own experiences with her mental health struggles, she wanted to give something back to people that might be feeling the same way. She's found the route she wants to take, she knows the sector she wants to work in, and she's working towards it single-mindedly.
I was a different person before I had my gender change. I would say 5 years ago I wouldn't be doing this because I wasn't confident in myself, but I'm getting there slowly but surely. The courses are helping me get more confident, and that helped me get going to a voluntary job and where I work. I was nervous coming back into learning because I didn't have very good experience at school. My confidence has grown with all the courses I'm doing, and the courses what I've learned. And I've learned about myself and learned about other people as well from different parts of the world. And I think that's important for my career to go further and further.
Dear me, so 3 years in, I still can't unmute when I'm supposed to. So that was Joanne Matthews, who won this year's Return to Learning Award in the Festival of Learning. And those Festival of Learning Awards are all about celebrating the achievements of people like Joanne and Elena as well. And I'm sure lots of you on this event have got inspirational learners or tutors or provision or employers you work with as well. And the good news is that nominations for next year's Festival of Learning Awards will open on Friday. So look out for that. And if you've got great stories like Joanne's or Elena's or similar, then please do get nominating away. Maybe we'll play their video in next year's event, hopefully. So that's we always like to start with some of those stories to kind of really illustrate how this learning works and the difference it makes. What I'd like to do now is to bring up the results of the first poll, if we can. So I know you've all been voting away. And there you go. So none of you think adult learners needs are fully met. That was my test to see if we've been infiltrated by DFE officials. But of course, there's so much going on that not many of you have said not at all. And I think partially is probably a fair result there, probably, isn't it? So lots going on, lots of brilliant stuff like we've heard so far and we'll hear during the course of the rest of the day. But actually so much more to do given the scale of the need and how much the funding has been cut by the government in England over the last decade. So thank you for voting on that. We're going to actually go straight on to our second poll as well. So now you've got the voting bug, hopefully. So this is about trying to get at what both the video there for Joanne, but also in the conversation with Elena, we're getting at. Now, the issue with these polls, you always have to get people to try and choose one, and then everyone says, oh, it's all of these and more besides, which is definitely true. But what we'd really like to get a sense from you of is, what do you think are some of the main benefits for people of participating in adult literacy, numeracy, or ESOL? So, you know, work-related, going on to further learning, accessing public services, improvements to health and well-being. And again, if there's kind of things not on this list, you can only do so many options in a poll, maybe kind of pop in the chat about something that you think's really important as well, and we try and gather together some of those comments as well as votes in this poll a little bit later on. So you've got how long are we giving you to look at this? You've probably got about 45 minutes to vote on this, so vote early and vote often would be my advice on US midterm elections day. Right, so I'm going to move us on whilst you're all kind of voting away to our first keynote speaker. I'm really pleased that we've got Professor Kees Hoogland with us. He's the Professor of Mathematical and Analytical Competencies of Professionals, which was not easy for me to say there, at the University of Applied Sciences in Utrecht. Kees, we're really pleased to have you with us this morning. I know you're going to give us some thoughts to start with, and then we're going to also open it up to some question and answers from the audience. So please do put your comments and questions for Kees into the Q&A, and we'll try and bring as many of those as possible. But Kees, welcome, and over to you.
Thank you. I try to share my screen now, but it says host disabled participant screen sharing. So someone has to allow me to share my screen.
Okay, I'm sure the team in the background are either trying to share your slides themselves or give you the permission to do so.
I will try again in a minute. And yes,
you should be able to share now.
Thank you. Great to be here. I consider it a big honor to be invited to share some ideas and some experience we have in the Netherlands and in a lot of partner countries with our work on numeracy. We basically work on numeracy, and we really like to share some ideas and some developments with this audience. Let's try to share it now. what I hope is that you now see a screen, an opening
Yes, we
screen.
can see.
Yes, okay, then we take it from here. It was very interesting, of course, to see the theme of your annual conference, Maximizing Multiply. That's immediately a very interesting numeracy statement, I think. That made me think about how that exactly works, but that's very interesting. What I really like to do is, let's see if this, yes. Talk a bit for 20 minutes, so it will be a bit fast, but I will share this presentation with all the participants. So you have the PowerPoint and you can maybe have a look at some details. I will now, sometimes are very fast moving. So the recent developments we like to share are from different Erasmus Plus projects. We worked from 2018 on what we call the Common European Numeracy Framework, and we brought together all kinds of ideas from all kinds of countries, even the United Kingdom, of course, with the developments on the numeracy strategy, etc., in a kind of a common language on what are important aspects when you think about numeracy, teaching numeracy, and provisions in numeracy. And we were very lucky to have a follow-up project from 22 to 24, Numeracy in Practice. And in that project with 11 countries, 11 European countries, we tried to develop those ideas further in materials, in awareness materials, in professional development modules, etc., etc. Further are we a bit attached to the second cycle of PIAC. I will tell you a bit more about that later. And we have some small projects, for instance, Maths in Prison, and there are very interesting developments going on for all kinds of special interest groups. I think the challenges we always present are the same challenges I see in your country, of course, and I think there are two major parts of that. I think especially around numeracy, it is not only the problems that citizens have with numeracy, but there is also a problem with the awareness of the importance of numeracy for personal empowerment and for societal and economic development. I think it is still, there are a lot of paradigms around numeracy that sometimes are not very helpful for further development, and I will show you a bit about that too. And the interesting part, for instance, in the Netherlands, when you see the graph at the right side, you cannot read the Dutch text probably, but in the Netherlands we have more people with low numeracy than we have people with low literacy. But nevertheless, 99% of the budget goes to literacy and only 1% goes to numeracy. And that's one of those aspects you see in more countries, that the awareness of the importance of numeracy is a bit lagging behind. And at the same time, we witness what we call a mathematization of society. More and more and more numbers, diagrams, graphs are used for communication between people, but also between government and people, between commerce and people, between hospital and health, industry and people. More and more numbers are used. So, and it has, of course, to do with digitalization, technology, and the availability to make graphs, etc., etc. So we really are working towards a mathematization of society. For instance, this is the Corona dashboard of the Netherlands, and even if you don't understand the language, you still can see that probably 80% of the information here is numeracy information. There are numbers, absolute numbers, relative numbers. Even the map is not a map of the Netherlands, but is a graph with densities. And that's the way the government nowadays communicates with their citizens. And they assume that everyone understands it and that they make sensible decisions based on this information. And that's a very interesting assumption. But it's not only the situation that are mathematized, but people more and more are confronted with all kinds of situations around money, shopping, reading the newspaper, etc. What's going on in Europe and in the United Kingdom, of course, the last PIAG results meant that these are the percentage of the working population that scored on a 5-point scale, level 1 and below. So for 5-point scale, level 1 and below, these are the percentages. And level 1 and below are associated with having difficulties with numeracy situations. For literacy, it's the same. If you have level 1 or below, people are assumed to have regular problems with those situations. So that's from maybe a quarter of the people to 1/7 of the people have regular problems with all kinds of numeracy situations. And that's of course one of the reasons why some countries like the United Kingdom, I think, invest in numeracy provisions and awareness of that. But there's still a lot to do, I think, and I think sometimes the importance of this is underestimated, because I think also in fake news and that kind of things, if you look at now going on the elections in the United States and the use of numbers and the use of fake news, I think a good level of numeracy could be helpful for that too. But if you want to do something about numeracy, and it must be a kind of an effective way to really empower people to become more, to improve their numerate behavior, I think one of the most promising approaches is seeing numeracy as a social practice. And that means that you don't look only at the skill, at the technical skill of doing calculations, but that you, in your teaching, combine all kinds of elements, how people experience numeracy, how they use it in daily life, where they see it all around them. And if you are trained to do that, maybe in one day you come across maybe 50 to 100 numeracy situations, maybe even unconscious. When you start the day, most people, when they start the day, they make the first numeracy decision. They look at the clock, or they look at their smartphone, what the time is, and if they have to get up or not yet. So all those kinds of things are numeracy decisions. And if you look at a day or a week, you make hundreds of numeracy decisions. What we use as a leading concept in the Common European Numeracy Framework is this diagram with 4 quadrants. And what we say is, yes, of course, if you want to become better in numeracy, if you want to improve your numerate behavior, you have to do something with knowledge and skills. Quantity and number, doing calculations, of course, but also getting better in using all kinds of tools for that. But as important are the context in which you do that numerate activities. In everyday life, in work-related things, in further learning, but also on the teams, finance, health is a very important part where you use a lot of numeracy. And it is not only about the knowledge and skills and context, but more and more higher order skills are necessary to cope with those numeracy situations. And with what do we mean by higher order skills? It is more about interpreting the situation, managing the situations, reasoning with the numbers, problem solving sometimes, but also critical thinking. Can this be true? What is the meaning of this number? What is the intention of the people who are presenting these numbers? And more we see that those higher order skills are key if you want to improve the numerate behavior. And so the higher order skills should be more and more part of our education, I think, and of our numeracy provisions. But we have one more quadrant that is very important. So the dispositions or attitude, or whatever you call them, or the affective parts of learning. Without self-confidence and without belief that you can do it, and without some flexibility and some ideas about collaboration with the others, that can be very helpful, and it can also be very not helpful if you have a very low self-belief, etc., etc. One of the things that I want to highlight from this is that the math anxiety is, I think, still one of the most spread. How should I call it? It is really a barrier for a lot of people to make progress to improve their numeric behavior. And math anxiety, it's very important to realize math anxiety is not a learner's characteristic, but math anxiety is a product of education. So education has caused math anxiety. And so education can also, I think, help to address this with adults, and by talking with them and do some autobiographic or biographic talks about how they experienced primary school, etc. So, because math anxiety can be really a showstopper if you want to improve numeric behavior. So what we try to do is, in all the activities we develop, we always acknowledge that we have a mix of this kind of aspects, and that we have to address all kinds of these aspects in all our educational activities. This is the same with in words. And we try to differentiate it a bit between levels. We say we have a level of personal use, how people use numeracy at home, the citizens use with the media and with reading the newspaper, etc., etc. We have a kind of professional use, of course. Some people use it in daily life and use it a lot. So we try to distinguish a bit between those kind of learners and between the material they need. There is one other thing that I really like to share with you, because it is a discussion that is always going on. And I'm sure you have the same discussions in the United Kingdom with teachers, with policymakers, with learners, with media, social media. What are now exactly those relevant basic numeracy skills if we look at 2022 or 2030, and how can we teach them? But the relevant is the key word here, and I will address this a few minutes. So probably you recognize the kind of discussion. What we hear a lot is when I talk about this kind of things, and I give a lot of presentations about this kind of things in all kinds of countries, and there's always one question coming up quite quickly, and it goes like this a bit. Now, absolutely fine, those broad, holistic ideas and connecting with reality, very appropriate for our learners who use it in a functional and practical way, but then always comes the but. First, of course, we need to explain, reteach, repair, practice, remedy those basic calculation skills which they don't have, which they don't have learned, which they didn't maintain enough, which they don't teach anymore in primary school. There are quite some countries who still think that you can solve all those numeracy challenges in primary school by simply teaching them the multiplication tables, and then you are fine for the rest of your life. But of course, that is nonsense, because as we saw, the world is changing, society is changing quite rapidly. More and more examples of how you use numbers to communicate are coming to us every day. So we believe much more in lifelong learning, and that numeracy should be part of lifelong learning, like literacy and like digital skills as a three cornerstones of lifelong learning. And that you always can empower people at every age. You can empower people to improve their numeric behavior. It is not a technical skill you learn when you are 10 and then you are finished for the rest of your life. So we really believe in an ongoing endeavor to improve numeracy skills. But this is interesting because it always comes up in discussions. You probably recognize it. And so we developed something that we called catastrophic teaching of basic skills. And that is the situation when people learn a basic skill, they practice it, and then they never use it again. Because that is very demotivational. It gives even a feeling of alienation and a loss of meaning. because you are in an educational situations and a teacher is teaching you something, so you're doing something and you practice it, you think, oh, I master it now, and then you never use it. And that is basic activities that are taught in schools, but also in adult educations sometimes. And most of the time that has to do with doing calculations with pen and paper in all kinds of situations and fractions, etc., etc. So what we really like, and there's more on a positive way to look at it, is teaching skills to use. So and that's the way you learn it, you practice it, and you use it functionally in all kinds of situations in daily life. And then you get that kind of empowerment as you think, hey, I can use it here, and you can improve it, and you see it in other situations, etc., etc. So that is really important, that there is a connection between the skills you learn and the functionality where you use it. And we always start with the functionality by letting talk about these kinds of things, but also let them make pictures of it, photos of it in their daily life where they encounter this kind of numeracy situations, and they take it as a starting point for education. And why is this discussion still going on? And it makes it understandable why this discussion is still going on. Because before 1975, there was a big focus on the basic facts in formal notations, tables of multiplication and the small additions and subtractions. And it made a lot of sense because you needed those basic facts in that time. You needed almost every day. There were standardized procedures to calculate, and calculations with pen and paper. And of course you needed them because if you wanted to make the bigger multiplications and the bigger additions and the bigger divisions, you had to use those basic facts. Otherwise, you cannot do the procedures with pen and paper for the multiplication, etc., etc. That basically meant that everyone in the shops, housewives, at school, in commerce, in health, people did with pen and papers all did. So it was a kind of a consistent whole of basic facts you learned, and you use them almost on a daily basis. But the interesting thing is, at that time was a very functional use. And you saw it, of course, in this kind of things that you immediately see that they are already a bit old. That changed, I think, almost 50 years ago. We have calculators, we have computers, we have models, we have apps, we have the mathematization of society. So the world has seriously changed. We have calculators in pens, in all kinds of calculators are everywhere. And even if you type in Google everything you want to know, 6 times 8 or much complicated things, even if you want to multiply fractions, it is quite amazing. If you type in Google 1 space 3/4 space x, not multiplication, but x, space 7 space, then Google knows you probably want to multiply fractions. So from there, fitting it in to what Google thinks you mean, there is an algorithm. I think they spent many hours to write this algorithm to recognize that probably someone wants to multiply fractions. Quite amazing if you really think about it. But if you have Siri on your mobile phone and you say 6 times 9, he just gives you the right answer. So that's going on nowadays. And that means that if you want to do something with those basic facts, we have to do it in a more practical way. For instance, in games and digital games that are going on, there's a very effective way to have people use a lot of those basic facts. You can visualize all kinds of basic facts, and people use that in daily life to make a quick estimation or to count in an efficient way. very interesting is also to do more auditory things. Talk with people about 6 times 8 and not only do it on pen and paper, on paper. And in estimations, we see a lot of things still going on, because estimating is basically, for complex situations, bringing it back to a simple addition or a simple multiplication, but then it is very helpful if you know that multiplication, what is the answer. And you can do that, do a lot of those estimations. So are these basic facts still widely used? Yes, probably, but not to do those large calculations, and more about doing estimating, global arithmetic, order of magnitude, proportional reasoning, digital games, functional use. So we really, in our education, must develop. I think those large calculations, if you go to the internet, you can find thousands and thousands of exercises with pen and paper, big multiplications and additions, etc., etc. It's very under researched, I think, and underdeveloped to have really good ways to teach people those nowadays things where they use those basic facts. And that's the challenge I think we have for the next 10 or 20 years. Okay, so if we combine it a bit with the tool used, it's very interesting to realize that tools are permitted, of course. Adults use tools. So dealing wisely and critically with a calculator is a skill. You have to practice that. Some people don't really understand what a calculator does, how it is with the order of things, etc., etc. But it's a kind of magical thing, and I think it is good that people really own also the functionality of the calculator. So you have to practice that to improve the numeric behavior. But you can also use Google or any other search engine to do all kinds of numeracy calculations. We try to translate that to all kinds of educational activities, of course, for adults. And because of the shift in those 4 holistic approaches, it means that we don't have much what we call a book with calculations or something, or an arithmetic book or a numeracy book, but it is all about having conversations, talk about the math anxiety, explore the world around you, work on the awareness where you use all these numeric things, and discuss themes and numbers in media a lot. And it's very interesting with adults because they really can reflect how it is when they read numbers in the newspaper, how it is about inflation and about gasoline prices, but also in health, how it is to have medications, but also risks on health risks, etc., etc. And so what we did, we made some thematic, what we call placemats, with all kinds of pictures, just to get the discussion going on all kinds of themes when we work with groups of adults. We give thematic courses where the numeracy is a bit more hidden. There's courses on educational games, on budgeting, or on cooking. And of course, all those things are very rich of numeracy situations, especially if you focus on that with the learners. You can also discuss the weekly experiences they have with forms, with text forms, with all kinds of forms they need for their daily life. Also very interesting is to systematically in the language lessons also integrate a numeracy and a digital skills part. So we strongly believe that numeracy is not something besides literacy and besides digital skills, but for an adult, they don't have a literacy problem or a numeracy problem or a digital skill problem. They have a problem. and they seek a perspective, and they seek to solve the problem. And the combination of those things are very important if you have provisions for empowerment of adults to cope with the current society, which, in my idea, is highly mathematized. I think this was the overview I could give you in 20 minutes. If you have more interest in all kinds of details or examples, etc., we can discuss that by email or in other ways. But numeracy means to us that it is always connected to the real world. It means it must empower the individual. It is not for selection. It is not to give them math anxiety. It should empower the individual. If you are learning and practicing math facts, very basic skills, preferably informal in digital games, visual, etc., use those calculations facts for estimation, and learn to master various tools for calculation and use them critically. This is, I think, in a nutshell, the things we are working on, the ideas we have, and I think by timing, I leave it at this, Stephen.
Brilliant. Thank you, Kees. There's so much that we could go through there. You covered a lot of ground in that 20 minutes. We've just got a few minutes, I think, to just pick up a couple of points and a number of things coming through the chat. One of the things that's a challenge for adult numeracy providers, I think, is to get people to sign up in the first place. And I think you were talking about engaging people through what they're interested in, and so that, you know, I've seen like cooking on a budget classes and things like that. In your experience, is that the best way to hook people in? Are there other ways to engage people?
I think the problem of reaching people with numeracy is in every country. If you put out an ad or a poster and you say the numeracy course is starting next week, you get 0 participants. So the awareness about numeracy all around us is not only something for providers and for policymakers, but also for the learners. So they have to experience, and a lot can be done in what we call the intake of learners. And they come with a problem, and you can talk. You need good teachers that also have this numeracy perspective and say, "Hey, I see here a combination. Maybe if we try to improve your literacy thing, and we try to improve your numeracy thing, you can better solve this kind of things." So we strongly believe, and this is our experience from the last years, that the integrated approach and see it as one of the cornerstones to solve problems is something, and the thematic approach is another one.
And I think so at the other end of the spectrum, one of the things you talked about was, you know, let's say somebody comes along to a class and they manage to pass the exam, and then they kind of forget about it and the learning dissipates. I think that's our adult learning participation survey, which we published yesterday. That shows that adults who take part in learning are more likely to then do so again in the future. But if you're not in learning, it's quite easy to avoid. Are there any sort of lessons from your work about how we support people to use those skills in practice once they've learned them?
Practice what you preach. That's of course one of the key things. As long as adults think that it is something kind of an outside themselves skill they have to master, then use it. That's not very helpful. They must experience immediately that you take their situation as a starting point, and their experience as a starting point, and you build it from there. And every adult we speak has a history in numeracy. And it is very interesting because it is very different. Some are very good in the technical skill, but are afraid to use it. Others missed the technical skills. So you really have to differentiate between that. And another thing is that is very fruitful is that we try to have the language teachers to integrate. If you have 10 lessons on language, you do 2 lessons on numeracy. And of course, the same happens 30% of the teachers think, yeah, that's a good idea. The other 30% say, oh, maybe. And the other 30% have a lot of math anxiety and say, no, that's not for me. I can't do that. I don't. So there is a lot. So we start with the 30% who likes to do that, just as an example, to see that it's not that difficult and that everyone uses numeracy. So everyone can talk about it, etc.
Yeah, that's a really important point. Yes, no, thank you. I'm going to ask just one last question before we let you go. This is a difficult question. I know the answer is it's complicated, but the map you showed earlier from PIAC, basically the UK looks, or I think it's England, looks pretty poor compared to lots of other European countries. Are there kind of particular things from some of the better performing countries that you'd say they're doing really well, that we should learn from them?
Oh, that's a very difficult question. Yes. I know, for instance, I think that the United Kingdom is doing a very good job, and a lot of teachers and policymakers are doing a very good job on numeracy, for instance. In the Netherlands, it doesn't exist almost. So if you look at the multiply scheme, the kind of money that is involved there. So I see a lot of initiatives. So it is very interesting to see what will happen in the next cycle of PIAC. And the results will be in next year, probably 2023 or maybe early 2024. And see if those investments help. But to be honest, within those countries, every country has their own problems with changing, the population changes, educational systems change. So it is very hard to, if we had the silver bullet, it would be great if we don't have it.
Yeah, we'd like a nice, easy answer, please. But yes, I think you're right. Actually, talking to other European countries, because sometimes we're a bit down on ourselves. And actually, the fact we've got an adult literacy and numeracy program, we always say there should be more money.
Of course.
But many other countries, it doesn't exist. So I think we should kind of recognise the good as well as say we can do better.
I think you're doing really a good job. So for your audience, of course, ask for more, but also be proud on the things you already accomplished.
Well, that feels like an excellent note to finish on. Kees, we're really grateful for your time this morning. That was a super interesting presentation and lots of other questions and comments that we didn't quite have time to get to. So you definitely provoked a lot of thinking. So thank you so much for your time this morning.
It was my pleasure.
Great. Thank you. A huge thank you to Kees. There are lots for us to reflect on, I think. And just before we move on to the next session, I'm going to ask if the team could just bring up the results of the second poll, please, and see how you have voted on the various benefits. I know there are a number of comments in the chat about actually a lot of these are interlinked and there are others on top of this, all of which is definitely true. I agree with those comments in the chat. But the options we gave you, quite an even split actually between those first three about progressing on to learning. We heard about that from Elena, didn't we? And the work-related stuff for her as well. But improvement to health and wellbeing feels so critical to me. Loads of brilliant evidence around that. So yeah, thank you for voting on that. I think that's a kind of normally you want a nice decisive result in a poll, but actually I think that kind of even split feels about right to me. And you know, as we said in the chat, lots of other stuff going on, and these are often interlinked. As both Elena and Kees and Joanne were saying actually. So I'm going to move us on now to our next session. We were talking about multiply during the course of the morning, and we're going to have a discussion now about what that looks like, how we make the most of it, some of the challenges that we've been talking about as well. And that's going to be chaired by Alex Stevenson, who's our head of essential and life skills. And so, Alex, over to you.
Thanks, Stephen. Good morning, everybody, and thank you for joining us. It's great to have so many people registered, and thank you to Kees from me as well for that super interesting presentation. And I think so many lessons in that from what we're what we're about to discuss in relation to the Multiply Adult Numeracy Programme. So as Stephen mentioned at the start of the morning, Multiply represents a significant new policy development and investment in adult numeracy skills. It's a £560 million programme over 3 years. Unlike many of our skills programmes, it's UK-wide, funded through the UK Shared Prosperity Fund. And in England, that programme is being commissioned by mayoral combined authorities in areas that have adult education devolution, and also by local authorities in the rest of England. Over the summer, those local authorities have been busy developing their investment plans for the Multiply programme and sort of thinking about and preparing for their delivery, which will include a range of really interesting numeracy interventions, ranging from formal qualifications to non-accredited learning. Things like family learning, workplace delivery are all on the table through the Multiply programme, and eventually we're told there'll also be a national online platform to support adult numeracy learning. And we're pleased to see as well that this programme is going to be extensively evaluated, so in due course there should be lots of useful intelligence and data coming out of the Multiply programme about what works in supporting adults with numeracy skills. So we thought that it would be appropriate in this context to talk to some of those involved in commissioning the new Multiply programme about their plans and their hopes for the programme and what's going on in different parts of the country. So I'm joined now by two mayoral combined authorities. First of all, we have Kat Radlett with us. Kat is the Principal Policy Officer at the Greater London Authority, and she's the lead there on the Multiply programme. And secondly, I have Parminder Singh Archer from the Cambridgeshire and Peterborough Combined Authority, who's the responsible officer for adult education in the Combined Authority. And they are going to join us and talk us through their plans for Multiply. So if I can go to Kat first of all, could you give us just a bit of an overview about your plans for Multiply? What are your priorities? Who are you trying to reach with the programme, and how do you see the delivery rolling out over the coming months and years with it?
Thanks, Alex, and hi everyone. Thanks for having me. I'm Kat from the GLA and the Principal Policy Officer for the London Multiply programme. So yes, I'll give a quick overview of what's happening in London. So London received a regional allocation of just under 41 million to run the government's Multiply programme, and in London our providers are AEB providers, so it means the London Multiply programme will be joined up with London's wider skills and employment offer. To start with, our funding decisions were very much based on data, so we allocated proportionately higher funding to support local authorities with a higher number of Londoners without level 2 qualifications in maths, so providing more money where we felt there was a skills gap. And our Multiply programme sits firmly kind of within the Mayor's wider ambitions for skills in London. So in January 2020, the Mayor published his skills roadmap for London, which set the direction of travel for adult education in London. Kind of quickly, the actions in the roadmap will ensure that London's provision is locally relevant, so a more joined up skills and employment offer to meet the needs of Londoners, but also local businesses and employers. Provision that makes an impact, which leads to economic and also social outcomes, and it's accessible, so we can reach those who need it. So for Multiply in practice, that will be supporting a minimum of 31,000 Londoners over the next 3 years through about over 250 courses across 57 providers across the city, and that's a mixture of local authority, FE colleges as well. So I guess kind of there's lots of provision happening, and we're working with providers at the moment who are in kind of different stages of development, but we know that 24% of funding has gone to courses to increase numeracy confidence. About 11% of funding has gone to courses to help people use numeracy to manage their money. And we know providers are working in partnership with organisations across the board, such as libraries, schools, health centres and job centre pluses. We know over 2,000 Londoners will be able to access courses delivered with employers, and we have 6 providers working with NHS trusts as well. And about 4,000 parents are going to be engaged with learning, and that consists of upskilling, but also courses to help them help their children with maths homework. And we also know providers are working with community groups across the city to reach and support those groups most in need. And we'll be publicly launching the London Multiply programme next Friday on the 18th of November. So we'll be talking lots about that. And that's kind of a very quick overview in London. Alex, is there anything else I should cover, or will we get into the detail?
That's a great introduction to your programme in London. Thank you, Kat. If I can cross over now to Parminder. Welcome, Parminder, and same question to you, really. Give us an overview of your priorities and plans for Multiply in Cambridgeshire and Peterborough.
So, good morning, Alex. Hope you can hear me. Okay, brilliant. Great to hear what's going on in GLA. Thank you for that, Kat. And so in comparison to GLA, Cambridgeshire and Peterborough is one of the smaller mayoral combined authorities in England. We're the only one in the east of England. And we are unique in the sense that half of our residents live in rural communities compared to some of the other combined authorities. So we have a population of around 900,000 living in 3 cities and 11 market towns and many villages and hamlets. And our elected mayor, Dr. Nick Johnson, he's a paediatrician by profession, and his approach is very much values-led. So he talks about compassion, cooperation and community, and very much interested in health outcomes and wider community and social outcomes being just as important as qualification outcomes, and trying to build that sort of a values-led approach across all of our policies and strategies. And when you think about Cambridge and Peterborough, immediately you'll think about the University of Cambridge. And so we know what world-class education looks like from a higher education perspective. But our vision really is, how do we get that world-class education and skills system from early years all the way through to adult learning and through into higher education? And that very much is our challenge. So if you know our geography, we are a tale of 2 cities. And Cambridge was described recently in an article in The Guardian as the most unequal city in the UK. And we also have a north-south divide in our sub-region, where we have a very wealthy and educated south centred around Cambridge and South Cambridgeshire. And this juxtaposes with our poorer and underinvested north, with Peterborough and Fenland. And within that area, we've actually got 3 of the most deprived wards for the skills measure in our area. And what struck me when I joined the Combined Authority is nobody talks about it. So that's so as you'll see, that's part of our targeting of our Multiply. And our approach to our employment and skills strategy and Multiply is very much that focus in terms of levelling up in the north of our sub-region, but also targeting those pockets of skills deprivation in the south. And rurality plays a factor here, of course, in our area. And we very much see Multiply as a once-in-a-generation opportunity for us to really make progress on numeracy. So as was said this morning, enrollments across adult learning have been in decline. So this is an opportunity for us to do something differently. And we really welcome the DfE's approach to allow local areas to have greater agency over how they use the funding. So we have an allocation of 4 million. In Fenland and Peterborough, as I mentioned earlier, half of our residents are estimated as having numeracy skills levels at entry level and below, which is quite a shocking figure in this day and age. And so a lot of our investment will go to targeting those areas. We're delivering across all of the menu of interventions with a target of 8,500 participants over the 3-year period, and around 750 courses. And we've commissioned our local authority providers, our colleges, but we also had a procurement process to bring new providers into it as well. So we have an additional 8 independent training providers as well delivering. And then in addition to that, we also have a third sector commission that we're about to launch in terms of some of the engagement activities in local communities that we're looking to do. And similar to CAT, we're delivering family learning, workplace support and interventions, community-led engagement, financial literacy, support for ex-offenders and prisoners, and also care leavers are also a focus in our area. And you may have noticed from my background, we're supporting Number Confidence Week, and we are working with National Numeracy UK in terms of delivering some of the numeracy champions and also the National Maths Challenge. And just to end by saying that that we also have the off-menu delivery as well, and teacher training and workforce development, and trying to bring new entrants into teaching is also one of our projects through Multiply, and also CPD as well of non-math specialists is the other area of focus that we're looking at as well.
Thanks, Parminder. Again, that's a really helpful overview of everything that you're looking to achieve through your Multiply program, and I'm really interested to pick up on the sort of how this looks from the learner perspective. And Parminder, you mentioned there that you've got some inequalities in between different parts of your region there, and there's quite a different profile. Who do you have in mind as learners for your Multiply program? Are you thinking sort of geographically focused, or do you have a sort of profile in terms of levels of skills, or what does that look like from your perspective?
So there's 2 strands to it. So obviously we want to have that universal. We're not in the business of creating postcode lotteries for learners, absolutely not. So we want to have that universal offer of numeracy support, and obviously a significant proportion of our funding is numeracy in the workplace. I think the earlier speaker was talking about we have this big section of the population who've done, yes, they might have achieved maths many moons ago. However, it's about the application of those skills and making them relevant today. So we don't want to lose that particular cohort either. But in terms of the weighting of our program, it is very much because we have less money. So it's very much about targeting those firstly from a geographic perspective, using things like the IMD data, using NOMIS data to look at qualification levels. National Numeracy UK also have a really good a local data maps using Experion data as well that we're using to target. So those are the kinds of learners that we want to target, but not to create. I don't want to give the impression that we're creating a postcode lottery, because that's always the risk with these kinds of things. But in terms of how we target our marketing, how we use social media campaigns, community-led campaigns, and then the other thing, given our rurality, is also that we have a provider that has a bus, which is a classroom that's going to go around the market towns and some of our villages to try and promote the offer. Similar to CAT, we'll be looking at community touch points like libraries. We're quite fortunate that we've got quite a good library network. Looking at housing associations in terms of them targeting some of their tenants as well. So it's about using all of these measures that we have. And as I said, once in a generation opportunity to have some funding to do some innovative delivery, and it not always being about qualifications. That actually quite a lot of our support is around outreach, engagement as well, in addition to more substantive provision. So it's really capitalizing on that and adding value to our AEB, which is very much about qualification-led delivery. So I just wish that we can extend it, and it not just being a 3-year thing, because as you know from your research, you need a much longer period of time in order to be able to demonstrate the impact of these interventions. So I hope that through other funding and through the legacy that we're looking to create with this, that actually we have a step change in the numeracy, but also wider essential skills in our area.
Thanks, Parminder. And if I can come back to you, Kat, on a similar question. Parminder was talking about having a sort of a universal offer, but then there's, some specific strands focusing on workplaces and other touch points in the community. How does the prioritization look in London? Do you have a similar set of priorities, or have you identified any additional groups that you'd like to support through the Multiply programme?
Thanks, and really interesting, Parminder. Thank you. Great to hear what you guys are doing. I think some of the groups that Parminder mentioned are kind of have a multiply focus, such as care leavers and parents. So there has been quite a focus from our providers on those groups. Otherwise, it is quite universal. Obviously, we're really focused on lower income Londoners and those without level 2 qualifications and below. I think it is quite dependent on the provider and what they're seeing in their local area. We have quite a few providers, but looking through kind of what their plans are, we are pulling out provision that's specifically targeted for groups, thinking about there's quite a few providers looking at support for refugees, including those from Ukraine and Syria and Afghanistan, disabled learners or learners with mental health needs. So I think there's definitely a good mixture of a lot of kind of more broad brush, those kind of outreach and kind of taster courses and bridging courses to kind of catch people, but then also those more kind of targeted focus as well. I think we were quite I don't think we were too prescriptive with kind of target groups. I think obviously we're apart from the ones that we were given to us by DfE, we really are hoping that providers are looking in their local area and looking at what is the need in their local area, and I think groups facing kind of structural inequalities, I think, will cross over with groups who might have lower skills in numeracy. I think for us, kind of our really kind of key aims and what we hope to see from Multiply, and kind of in line with what I mentioned about the skills roadmap, is really thinking about increasing the number of Londoners with numeracy confidence and skills, and by accessing courses at a level and a venue that suits them. So really thinking about the accessibility of this provision for Londoners, whether that is more of a practical thing or more of a kind of attitudinal thing. We know that 58% of Londoners have low numeracy skills, so for us it really is, we are looking quite wide. And then our kind of second key aim is really thinking about supporting Londoners to have numeracy competence and skills they need for progression, thinking about life and work. So to kind of better manage everyday finances, help children with homework, and thinking about further learning and good work as well. So yeah, I would say ours is probably more general, but when you look down to kind of provider level, you can really see providers reaching out to those groups they know that there's a skill gap.
Thanks, Kat. That's great. At this point, I was going to move on to Ian from a perspective from outside of a combined authority. Unfortunately, he's had a fire drill. At least we hope that it's a drill, and he's had to evacuate from his current location. So we may get Ian back shortly. But in the meantime, we will press on. So, and I don't know whether either of you were able to join us earlier on this morning for the keynote that we had from Professor Kees Hoogland, but one of the points that he was making was around the raising of awareness of adult numeracy, and how do you engage adults. And if you tend to advertise a numeracy course, just as a numeracy course, you may not be hugely successful. So I'd like to know a bit more about what are you doing to really sort of engage people in learning and raise awareness of the offer that's there. Could I come to you, Parminder, on that one first?
Yeah, I think that's the key thing really, in terms of how do you reach those learners? Because if they were well, potential learners, because if they're already in the system, it means that the existing mechanisms got to them. So I think it's about I would call it a sort of saturation campaign, in terms of using every possible channel open to us. So obviously we've got the official channels, you know, in terms of the usual things around social media and promotion. But what we're doing differently with Multiply is casting the net wider, in terms of using more of those community touch points. And Numeracy Champions is one of the programs that we're supporting with National Numeracy UK. And we want to use that as a legacy, to have those to have people in the communities, you know, whether it's librarians, whether it's parents, teachers, whomever, and people in the workplace, to be able to have the confidence to have those conversations about numbers and maths with individuals. So that's part of the legacy of the project for us. And then I mentioned about the number bus that's going to be going around to do in targeting more rural areas. We're also looking at I mentioned about the housing associations and libraries. So it's very much about trying to use the touch points. And then Kat was talking about giving providers a bit of creativity to sort of package the courses. So for instance, we wouldn't be promoting a maths course, if you like. Some of the things that providers are doing is, you know, they're talking about, you know, using cookery skills, using sports, using music, using different hooks in order to get people in. And then the other bit of it is around embedding of number skills within other courses. And certainly some of our, we've been talking to our ESOL providers in terms of how we can enrich ESOL by having some if you like, number confidence and math skills embedded in as part of the course. And then part of the CPD that we're funding as part of our workforce development strand of Multiply is around the embedding of those skills amongst vocational, technical, and also non-teaching and non-subject specialist staff as well. So I think it is about that saturation model for us, really using this investment to bang the drum, but also to use it as an opportunity to promote essential skills more widely. So that's the strategy really. And then in terms of the if you like, the specific groups such as the care leavers and the prisoners, again, we have specific providers that have a specialism in terms of working with them. And then the idea is that because working with our local authority partners, we know who those individuals are, is that we will use that mechanism to put on some bespoke opportunities for those learners as well. So it's that saturation model is what we're looking to achieve.
Brilliant. Thank you, Parminder. A really interesting range of approaches there. And it's been a good few years since I've seen the use of a bus in adult education. So I'm really pleased that it's coming back. Kat, I mean, feel free to add anything, you know, around awareness raising that you're doing in London as well as part of your program. But we do have a question from our audience as well. And the question is around how progress and success is going to be defined within the Multiply programs. So what metrics are used to measure a successful outcome? So if you want to either add anything on the point around awareness or come straight in on outcomes measures and what does success look like, then feel free to do so.
Thanks, Alex. And yeah, quickly, I think a lot of what Parminder said, I know our providers will be doing as well, like kind of targeted outreach. I think there's probably in London thinking about what providers are doing and then what the GLA can do on a kind of more regional level. So we're lucky enough to have a kind of dedicated comms officer for the Multiply programme who is supporting us to do the launch moment next week. And then we'll also have kind of work to have kind of drumbeat moments throughout the next 3 years to really talk about Multiply and hopefully get the message out there. And as Parminder said, we'll be looking to kind of get the message out through kind of all the routes we have possible, and that includes a lot of our other kind of skills and employment offers in London, such as No Wrong Door. So yeah, and then on the question, good question. So in London, we measure the social and the economic outcome as well. So obviously we have kind of what we're measuring for the DFE, but for London specifically, we have our London Learner Survey, which will include the Multiply programme. And that uses 7 measurements, and it's a mixture of social, so thinking about social integration, health and well-being, and participation in your community, but also the economic outcomes as well, such as accessing good work and progression into further learning. And alongside that, we will also have an evaluation within our wider AEB evaluation as well.
Thanks, Kat. And do you take a similar approach in Cambridgeshire and Peterborough, Parminder, in terms of the measuring social outcomes as well? Is that something that's part of your plans?
Yeah, so very similar to what Kat has said, and as I said at the beginning, the mayor is very, coming from a health background, he's very interested in those wider outcomes around well-being. And then so all of the sort of outputs that we need to demonstrate to DFE, but looking at gathering that individual learner distance travelled is another thing that because number confidence is one of our objectives in our programme, and so we'll be working with National Numeracy to help us to capture that, and we're using their tool. So this is in addition to all of the DFE outputs, the combined authority outcome measures, but also looking at number confidence as an additional one. We will also similarly to GLA be undertaking the evaluation as well of the programme to look at achieve what we've achieved. Distance travelled as a sub-region in terms of how whether or not we've shifted the dial on numeracy and essential skills, but also looking at lessons learned for the future in terms of what's the best practice, and what can we leave as a legacy and build on for future, whether that's off our own steam and mainstreaming it into AEB or into a skills fund as it's going to be called, or looking at other funding opportunities too.
Brilliant, thank you, Parminder. And I think we have now got Ian back, so I'd just like to bring Ian in while we've got a little bit of time in the session remaining. If you're there, Ian. As I mentioned before, outside of adult education devolution areas, it's local authorities. Ian's joining us as Learning Director from Inspire Nottinghamshire. So Ian, give us a bit of a take on Multiply from your perspective, and what you're looking to develop, and anything else that you might like to share in relation to your Multiply programme.
Thanks, Alex. Morning, everybody. Sorry about that. Just had a quick fire drill as these things happen. So yes, thanks for inviting me. In Nottinghamshire, we have an allocation of funding that's gone to the top tier county council, and the county council's kind of commissioned Inspire Learning alongside one of the local further education colleges, and also Futures, who deliver the careers and also apprenticeship provision. So they're kind of the 3 main delivery partners across the county to deliver Multiply. And I think alongside with what Parminder and Kat's been saying, we've got clear kind of focuses and some kind of key priorities across the county that we want to focus our Multiply delivery on. And we're also excited about the fact that it's an investment in not only accredited but also non-accredited delivery, which we think is fantastic, and we're really relishing that as an opportunity to develop our non-accredited courses and support So some of the key kind of groups of priority across Nottinghamshire, linked with Nottinghamshire County Council's own sort of strategy, are people who are from ex-care, so people who Nottinghamshire County Council may have been the kind of corporate parent, who now will be 19 plus and probably no longer in care, but they're one of the key priorities for support. We're targeting the most economically disadvantaged residents across the county as well, because Nottinghamshire is a county with some big extremes, a bit like Parminder was describing with the kind of difference between the south of Cambridgeshire and the north. We have some differences where, we have some very prosperous parts of the county also in the south, places around Southwell and in Rushcliffe, one of the 7 districts. But then we also have ex-mining communities towards the centre and the north of Nottinghamshire, which suffer multiple disadvantages, and there's quite high levels of indices of deprivation there. So again, poorer people are kind of a key focus, and we're going to look at the 250 most disadvantaged super output areas, which tend to be concentrated towards the centre and the north of Nottinghamshire, as being a key area for our multiplier delivery. We're also going to be looking at both offenders and ex-offenders as a kind of key priority group as well that we can really work with, because that reflects, I think, some of the national statistics that show that levels of numeracy among prisoners are very, very high indeed, and that some prisoners have numeracy levels that are kind of below what you'd expect for a kind of an 11-year-old. So there's some correlation in the research between low numeracy and kind of recidivism. So we're trying to kind of focus especially on ex-offenders to see, by supporting them not only to gain qualifications but to gain confidence in number, that we can actually help them to not go back into crime again. And then last but not least, another key focus is those people kind of age 50 plus who might be managing complex and kind of chronic health conditions, because again, being more comfortable and confident with number, I think, can really assist people to be able to self-manage their kind of chronic health conditions, which quite often require managing many different pharmaceutical, drugs and medicines. Quite often a bewildering number of them have to be taken, and they have to be taken obviously in the precise dosages at the right times. Sometimes you need to do it after you've eaten, sometimes it's without eating, and these things seem simple, but when you have 15 different medications that you have to take in the course of a day, then actually being more confident with number can help. And quite often things like diabetes and other conditions, if you can monitor your glucose levels, your need for insulin, etc., throughout the course of the day, the more confident you are as a person with those conditions to use number, you can actually really help yourself to manage a condition effectively, and that can really be helpful, and obviously has, hopefully we're going to measure this as well, some benefits in terms of whether those patients and those people then have to make more use of the more formal health interventions, because the idea will be that by providing support for them, they may not be needing those formal health interventions at quite the same level as people that don't have that support. So they're sort of our key focuses that we're looking at across Nottinghamshire.
Brilliant, thank you, Ian. And I think, in the light of what we heard from Kees Hoagland earlier about linking in adult numeracy provision with the sort of literacy and language skills. We heard Kat mention sort of engaging learners from Ukraine before. I think some of what you were saying there about linking numeracy learning and health, Ian, and so much of as well as to what all of you said about how you're planning to deliver your programs really suggests that this is going to be a fascinating development to keep an eye on. Thank you all for sharing your multiply plans with us. We look forward to sort of following that over the coming years, and I'm sure many people watching will be involved in the delivery of those in some capacity or other. As Stephen mentioned at the start of the day, we are launching today a Multiply Effective Practice Network. Details of that will be be shared with you in the on screen and as part of our follow-up from this event. So do sign up for that if you'd like to participate in more events and discussions like this one to share learning around Multiply and what's working and how we can overcome any challenges with the program. But thank you, Kat, Parminder, and Ian for those contributions. Really helpful. And I'm going to hand back now to Stephen to introduce the next part of the programme.
Thanks, Alex, and thanks to all of our speakers there. Alex has handily done one of the plugs I was going to do, so I shan't repeat that, but please do sign up to that network if you're able to. It's great to sort of hear this morning about what's going on at a national level, but also, you know, 60% of the adult education budget is devolved within England, seems to be 80%. So it's great to hear from some of those local and combined authority areas as well. And actually, even if provision's commissioned nationally, it's delivered locally, so that it kind of really matters. It's also great that we've been holding this conference during Lifelong Learning Week as well. I had a quick peek at Twitter during the course of that as well, and I spotted Exeter College got some pop-up maths events going on, showing you that maths is fun. I don't need to be showing that maths is fun, but I accept I'm not representative of the UK population. So some of the things that Keith was talking about there actually reflected in what Exeter College are doing as well there, and lots of other providers across the country, I know. Covered a lot of ground during the course of the morning. I really do hope that when we meet again next year or the year after, that we're starting to see that participation line tick up after the decade of declines due to UK government funding cuts. We've got lots of interesting examples going on and some new funding here through Multiply. So there's lots to build on, and this really matters. And I think I end really with the beginning, which is that Elena's story, I think was just so inspirational. I spotted lots of you saying that in the chat as well. Her story was really what this is all about. So huge thanks to sort of all of you for joining this morning. What we're going to do now is have a quick 5-minute comfort break, and then our 2 breakout sessions will start. One about access to numeracy for literacy and ESOL learners, and one about trying to raise participation in adult essential skills, and some case studies there. The links are in the agenda, and they should also be in the chat function as well. So if we take a 5-minute break now, and then it's just gone 11:45, so we're a couple of minutes over, just gone 11:45, we'll kick off with those sessions. So thank you so much and enjoy the breakouts.